is where we discuss the possibilities.
Hey guys, I'm Dr. Corey Propst at the Diet Doc Wellness Director and Vice President. I'm here again today with Dr. Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc. Welcome back to the Diet Doc Life Mastery podcast. We're in the third segment of our creativity series. That's part of our fitness entrepreneurship area. And I've been informed that we're going to be discussing the 5 primary principles to foster creativity. I was trying to come up, darn it.
It's just making that up as you go.
I wanted to do the whole alliteration thing, bust up laughing, but
just channeling that creativity on the spot. Good effort. Good effort. So, Corey, thank you for that intro. I'm a little bit sad that we're going to be ending the creativity series, but I think we got some really good content down in terms of what people can do to be more creative, but more importantly, why it's even a thing, why people should think about this for their business, especially a fitness entrepreneurship business where, I believe things are getting more crowded. There's a lot of elbow bumping at the top right now. People are trying to carve out their own niche, become an expert in something, maybe specializing in an area that other people aren't necessarily occupying a space. So that takes creativity, right?
Well, yeah, it does. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking we can get so bogged down at the same time if we're trying to do something so completely different than everyone else. I don't think that's really necessary to, quote, carve out your niche and really create something special and novel. It doesn't mean it has to be something that's never, ever been done before. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you're probably going to be sharing with us practical tips. Okay. That'll be
try.
Yeah.
But since you brought that up, I think that's a really important thing. There is a concept, we talked about this, I believe, in the first episode, that if you bring something forward that's so unique and so novel, people are just going to miss it. It's going to be off their radar, and you could be, a carrier of the best idea ever, but you were just not hitting something universal enough for people to recognize.
Yeah, it's too unfamiliar at that point. It may work a bit later on down the road when it's been tried and done. But, yeah.
So let's start there. Again, since you brought this up, I think it's really important to understand that there is this dichotomy or this natural tension between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And this goes back even to who was the first major Greek philosopher? Socrates, I think. Those guys, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, there were some debates back then about what's life supposed to be like. And they would argue, maybe it's supposed to be just ordinary and hedonistic and you seek pleasure. And other people would say, wait a second, no, I think you should try and accomplish something that's extraordinary, something that uses our intellect. And so there were kind of these debates all the way back, 3,000 years ago. So
that's interesting because I mean, I would tend to fall on the side of extraordinary just because that's going to create a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose and a sense of vitality and energy generated and a sense of momentum, and get into motivation. But if I'm just kind of going through the motions and squirrel that's basically what you're talking about on the other side of the fence. I mean, maybe I'd get like lots of blips of pleasure and dopamine hits, but I wouldn't necessarily feel like I'm creating anything either.
Right. So that's a great segue into the first principle. If you want to have a rich, creative life, and some of this is going to be for personal actualization, you're just going to be somebody who enjoys life more if you see creativity in things and you foster an attitude of creativity. But I also want you to understand toward the end of this podcast that there are some very primary reasons why you should be specific about channeling it into your business. But let's talk about just awareness and what creativity is again in the brain. So I'll go back. I think it was Aristotle who said, he was on the side of you should be striving for excellence. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have that mindset that I'm not just Joe Six-Pack going home and just living my life. And of course, there are some reasons why you need to unplug and have that rest. But in your brain as an attitude or a precept, if you're always looking to do something the best you can do, be the best you can be, I think that generally creates an attitude of, I'm gonna put excellence in the same sentence with creativity, because you're looking to create something new, something better, not always some revolutionary idea, as you said, but just creating something better than you have now that you can then share with other people.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the massive amount of emails that I write every day and how each one I can look at as its own little masterpiece.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you do have that awareness, the first principle, just having an awareness of creativity, this is going to be a character strength I pursue, is to be curious, to be creative, to be inventive. Then I think you should create some habits. That would be my second point, which comes into action. You have to do something to be creative. Creative thought doesn't happen when you're just laying on the couch typically. It's as little bits of information are coming into your brain and all this stimuli, it makes you start thinking. And that's another one of those dichotomies, is that you need some alpha state brainwave flow where things are pretty routine, monotonous, there's not too much overstimulation, but you still need content and new information to bring ideas to the surface.
Okay, so number one is what?
Is awareness and just understanding how the brain generates creativity. We talked about this. I don't want to completely unhash what we talked about in the first couple.
Part of it is being curious and
absolutely,
and letting in novelty and pursuing information.
So it's that intentional awareness that I'm going to live a more creative life and bring more creativity to my business, to other people around me.
Number two is habits.
Yeah, creating a habit, understanding that creativity takes action. I think that's...
So let me ask you, Joe, do you have disciplines? Because I look at habits as disciplines. I am deliberately, consciously taking action in some way towards something. So do you have habits directly geared towards enhancing creativity?
I have tons of them, but I think they kind of boil down to just knowing, number one, that I do have that creative life that I want to feed. But then just like when I was, for the first part of the year, from January on, I said, you know what, I want to finish this book. So every single Sunday, I'm going to come to my office and I'm going to spend at least 8 hours here just writing. So that was a habit. I said, I'm going to generate good things. And then that also, again, triggers your brain. It's like, okay, I'm in my creative space. I'm in my creative time. I've got this attitude of creativity. I had certain playlists I would play, for that kind of thing. And it's to stimulate those habits, even cognitively.
Correct.
It just gets you in that groove.
Well, also, because when you're in that space, you aren't always going to feel like, oh, it's flowing and all of these amazing ideas are coming to me and all of these words are just coming out of my fingertips on the keyboard. It is also creating a habit of resilience and grit, because you may sit there for an hour and just feel a sense of stuckness, like nothing's happening here. And on that note as well, with resilience, you're building the capacity to sit within the tension as well. Because creativity is not all about ideas just coming at you and flowing. It is, like you said, it's a very deliberate process. But in that moment, being able to say, I have this level of awareness that this is kind of where I'm at right now and what I'm experiencing, but this doesn't mean that creativity isn't necessarily going to be prompted in this environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and as a point, I mean, if you want one specific thing to do to create a habit for creativity, just schedule an hour a week to say, this is my creative hour. And what am I going to do during that hour? I might just get some colored pencils and color like I did when I was 5 years old and play some music, or I might read a book on creativity, or I might write down a story, or I might, for my business, just think, okay, this is an hour of time that I'm going to use for creative problem solving for my business. So I'm going to sit in that scheduled hour and say, what is the biggest problem my business has, or the biggest need, or what can I analyze in my industry that could be solved that maybe somebody's missing? So it's just creating a habit of even having habits, just having that time.
Exactly. One of my habits is, and I've talked to my clients about this, I know you do, you carry a notebook with you everywhere. I do as well. I always carry just a book with me too that I'm reading. Wherever I go, there is a book in my purse for downtime, waiting time, so that I'm stimulating my brain. But I like to try to capture a pack of note cards. I can't have a notebook, but I carry note cards so that I can just jot down, and it's more organized, like one thought on a note card, one thought on another note card, because I have to get it out of my head. The issue is that we can have so many ideas and ramblings and wanderings and musings that because we can only keep so many ideas up there at one time. And then we say, don't forget that, don't forget that. And then what happens? Like 5 minutes later, it's gone, and we're like, I wish I had remembered that or written it down. So that's one of my habits is write it down.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've been in the middle of Costco writing down an idea.
And as we're talking, you're kind of touching on the other principles. So I hope this all ties together well for people. But first of all, just to revisit, number one being having an awareness that I want a creative life and space and reason. Number two is having those habits. Number three, we mentioned a little bit in that last point, is to have the environment and the time. I said, schedule that time. But you mentioned before that novelty stimulates creativity, and it does, but so does routine. So having a creative environment. One of the people posted on Instagram when I threw a photo of a university building with bold colors, curves, asymmetry, all this stuff. She said, wow, I just love that. And I said, yeah, that's because universities do that on purpose. They want to be creative and on the edge and not normal. And so you've got both of those tensions as well. You can have a very routine environment, or you can have something that you go to that's absolutely not routine for the same reason of creating that space within your brain just to generate ideas.
Yeah, there's actually been studies that have shown that people in tidy environments tend towards more conventional ideas, and people in messy environments tend to be and have more creative ideas. They had this ping pong ball company. I just read this. You're nodding your head like you're familiar with the study.
Well, not that study, but I've definitely seen studies on this. Yeah.
Yeah. They brought in people. Some of them were in a tidy room. Some of them were in a messy one. And they asked them to come up with novel ideas for uses for ping pong balls. And they found that the people in the messy rooms came up with, they all came up with the same number of ideas. So ideas were there, but the messy room participants had 28% more creative ideas than did the tidy room participants. Now, I found for myself, I guess if someone walked into my office right now, they wouldn't think it's necessarily super tidy. But I tend to prefer things like not being disheveled and messy, and easily, so I can easily put them away. But what I found is when I'm in that creative mode, things get that way more easily. And by the time I'm done with that little slot of time, things could pretty much be everywhere.
And it's your comfort level, because I'm the same way. If I'm just sitting in a shithole, I'm not going to feel creative. I'm going to feel anxiety. I'm going to get up and start cleaning.
Yeah.
But I've had friends who have gone to the ruins of abandoned castles in Paris to write their greatest poetry. And we always talk about that, getting in a creative place and thinking then you're going to be struck by inspiration. But this is going to happen if you're looking for it wherever you are. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to having just the general awareness and then creating the habit. And then any environment you prefer can work. Sure. But I think we have to schedule that time to be in those environments. Otherwise, we just get bombarded with too much daily life.
Well, and don't you think too, because I just had a thought about when I'm in an airport, that's not a particularly calm environment for me. I mean, there are people everywhere, the TVs are on, the announcements for the flights are going left and right. And at the same time, if we're aware, we can say, this is a really rich environment for lots of different things and ideas here. So that's why I love the first principle, awareness, because we don't have to be in an environment that we've structured to be creative, but we can say, okay, not the one I would choose, but it's a really optimal environment for novelty, so I'm going to use it.
You're going to gather information, which leads into the final 2 points. Generation of creativity isn't just a linear thing. There's not a category that says, okay, this was creative, this wasn't. You just being there and observing and gathering information, jotting notes can be great for later times of intense work that you're going to start putting some stuff down.
Yeah, I think of all the ideas that I've written down that when I've written them, I've thought this is really silly or could be completely irrelevant. And it may be. I may never use that, but I may.
So have you heard of the Japanese therapeutic model for mental health called Morito? I think it's called Morito therapy.
That sounds familiar, Joe, but I couldn't tell you what it's about.
Okay. Well, I had never heard of it until recently, but it was unique to me in that this particular philosophy, instead of being super psychoanalytical and let's process emotion and what's happening, mm-hmm. It's more of let's just put that to the side for a while and get you busy doing some real life. Like in this time of your anxiety or depression or confusion, there's been a lot of stuff piling up in your life that's just adding stress. So let's start addressing this. Mm-hmm. Let's get you a better job, or let's get you doing this. And the goal is to get people participating in the parts of life mm-hmm. that are more fulfilling. And then some of these so-called problems just kind of go away. Mm-hmm. So I think you can understand the value of that.
Oh, totally. There's something to be said for quote unquote talk therapy. Let's analyze, let's process, let's talk, but that keeps people in their heads. And oftentimes we need to get them in their bodies with experiential therapy. And I think that's what you're getting at, is getting them moving, getting them into life, getting them active. And man, I mean, yes, totally valuable.
Well, and that's my number 4 principle for creativity, because other people like Abraham Maslow and Carl Jung talked about striving and becoming, and like this Morito therapy, it's work. And creativity's work. It takes action. There's this thought sometimes I think that it just happens to people, but it takes generative work. And that's part of that process. But interesting, like I said, there are times of rest. You need to put information in, you need to struggle, and then just let it sit in your subconscious for a while, get busy, wash it out, and then come back to it, because with new time, new experience, and some rest, things start making sense and sorting out.
Yeah, so on that note, I have read, and I've tried this, that it is most beneficial. Let's say we're writing something. We keep coming back to that example of writing. To never completely finish, like close the circle, never completely finish the thought. Sit down, do your writing, but stop halfway through something. Don't end it, because you want it to continue marinating in the background and simmering back there. So let's not aim for closure. Like, okay, done, figured it all out, because that's not what's going to be most productive for creativity.
And I think in the 10 years you and I have worked together, you probably recognize that that's certainly how I address business creativity. Is I'll throw out so much stuff and so many ideas, and I'm writing some down and I'm outlining some things. And then I look for the things that are either just necessary or more engaging to us, more interesting to us. And some of those things, as you said, they never go away. They're in a notebook somewhere, a spreadsheet. But it takes bringing out a lot of stuff that you can sort through, and that becomes part of that work process of creativity.
And would you say that part of that work process is noticing patterns? That's why you want just a prolific amount of ideas, even if you think they're going to be irrelevant. So then you can start sorting through and finding patterns.
Yeah, which goes back to the first principle of awareness, and especially for your business, understanding the changes happening in your industry, looking at other industries to see what they're dealing with under the umbrella of the same culture. This is all of, going from that very top of awareness down to creating habit, creating time and environmental space, addressing creativity as a work process, that makes it just fun. To me, it's not just laying around waiting for an idea. But the last thing you mentioned, I carry around a notebook. And in today's our second podcast for this, I put a picture of this notebook because it was just interesting to me. I was at the bar. I was talking to a friend of mine about this novel, and these are all her notes on my notebook. If I didn't have this with me, what would this be, on a napkin or something? But she's just so excited, scribbling all this stuff out, and we're hashing through these ideas. We got these subplots and all this stuff going. And then I just, after a while, I looked down at the bar, and it was so interesting that there's my notebook next to an empty glass of tequila and my ink pen and my glasses. And I'm like, that's a great picture.
Yeah,
because that's creativity in one visual space. Is, I had the awareness. I've been doing this work for years on this book. I've got the habits down. I'm at a creative workshop. I've got my notebook. And that's the fifth point, is having a way to record these things. So whether it's a notebook, on my computer, I have folders with different files, which might be business ideas, whatever, book ideas, blog ideas, even like that. And you can just, every time you have a simple little idea, which as a writer, it could be, oh, I just thought of a new character, or I just thought of a scene, put that down. Don't let it go. And that's the fifth, and I think final point, very specifically having that way of recording your creativity. So now you've got all that stuff that you can play with.
Yeah, I text myself a lot. I send myself emails. There are so many apps out there too that people can use to stay organized around just collecting their thoughts. What I love about that image that you painted with your notebook and your glasses and the drink, is that you weren't just collecting your ideas either. Because of the habit you created with carrying the notebook around, you were able to collect other people's ideas as well.
Great point. Great point. So that's it, guys. 3 episodes on creativity. And I really think this can be important for you, for your personal life, fulfillment. It's such a thread all the way back to the greatest psychologists and philosophers and creatives of our species. So you're going to be able to take this information. It's going to make you way better at being a business owner. It's going to make you more creative. It's going to bring greater ideas to your business, which is going to attract new people. So what could be better than that, Corey? This has been amazing for me.
No, this has been fun. Can you just go through the 5 again for listeners really quickly?
All right. So number 5 is having that awareness that creativity is within your brain. Everybody has access to creativity. You just have to be looking for it. It's also a habit. So you have to be maybe creating some time. That's the third point, is looking for these habits you can keep employing, but always look for that environment in that space, which would be the third one. And then 4 is understanding that creativity is a work-rest dichotomy. You're working for it. It's a long-term process, but it takes time of rest and so forth, like you said, to let that stuff marinate. And then number 5 is having a system of recording your creativity. So files, spreadsheets, notebooks, things where you could just get in the habit of catching those moments.
Awesome. Joe, I'm disappointed that you didn't come up with an acronym.
Yeah.
I may have to do that just because.
We'll do that for the show notes. I'll do that. I'll come up with an acronym or an alliteration or something so that your brain can then be happy.
So that I can remember it.
Yeah. All right, Corey. Well, thank you for letting me do this series and having fun with it. And now, guys, we're going to be back into nutrition and motivation mindset stuff. We're going to get some more coaches in the coaching clinic. But thank you for this fitness entrepreneurship segment. We love your attention and questions. So make sure, one of the things, I'm not sure, Corey, have you visited our iTunes account? Do we get anybody watching there? Is it primarily through YouTube and SoundCloud?
We need people there watching us and rating us and giving us comments, guys, because that helps other people find the podcast. And this information, we do this because we feel it can be beneficial to all of you and our owners, the Diet Doc family at large as well. So please head on over there to iTunes and give us a rating and comment. We'd love to get your feedback.
And I actually just do it so I can talk to you every day, Corey, and have this great conversation. So I don't do it for anybody listening. So just throwing that out there.
I feel very special now.
But that's a good point. iTunes would be a great place. I think I'm going to go over there and see if we have comments and things like that, because I think that is important for our longevity. So thank you, guys, and we will see you next time with some great new content on probably nutrition or motivational mastery.
Right. Thanks, guys.